So circling back to where we started, mindfulness is the key to the good life. So why do you believe that's the case? Is there a final thought on why that's the key to the good life?
Essentially, mindfulness is not Byron Bay, frou-frou. You don't have to sit in a triangle and do kumbayas. It's all just being present.
Hello everybody, I'm Michael Darby from Quantum United Management. Thanks for joining us. I'm very excited today to have our special guest, Pippa Baker, with us. Welcome, Pippa.
Thank you, Michael.
I'll just introduce Pippa. Pippa is a mental health and wellbeing leadership coach who works mostly with businesses and organisations. She's a principal master instructor in mental health first aid. She's completed the Science of Wellbeing at Yale University and also positive psychology through the University of Pennsylvania. So Quantum actually had Pippa deliver a session to our whole team last week around our own health and wellbeing. And it was a great session that the team were very pleased with and still talking about today. I thought I'd really love to share that message if we could with our communities. Everyone's challenged at the moment across most of Australia. So I thought, what a great way to, our vision is to create vibrant and connected communities, and we're always looking for ways to keep adding value to that. And I think this discussion today will uncover, I know, lots of ways that we can help connect and make our communities a lot more vibrant. So thanks again for joining us.
It's an absolute pleasure. And may I just say right from the start, you discussing the importance of connection is a brilliant segue into exactly what we'll be talking about today, because essentially COVID has given a lot of us a feeling of disconnection and a feeling of isolation.
Yeah.
And ironically, isolation is a big part of experiencing depression. Yeah. And it's not to say necessarily that you may have clinical depression, but you may be experiencing feelings of overwhelm, feelings of sadness, because humans by their nature are pack animals. Yeah. And so when we feel disconnected with our communities, that can be something that can lead to those negative emotions taking over and affecting our mood. Yeah. And that in turn can affect our behaviour and how we feel.
Yes, indeed. Look, I wanted to explore that a bit further about what residents and what the broader community will be experiencing at the moment. And I thought one key takeaway from our last session I wanted to table was, and you mentioned mindfulness is the key to the good life, and I love that. I really love that. So before we get off on that wonderful track, I think we'll circle back to what we're experiencing at the moment in your perspective. We'll move through a few stages and finish up with why mindfulness, and I agree with you, is the key to the good life. So again, maybe just touching on what are people going through at the moment and what are they experiencing, and like we talked about, it's good to acknowledge that it's okay that we're going through those emotions and feelings.
And it is very normal. And I think that's a big part of the piece of why COVID has had so much confusion around it as well, is that social media hasn't been around for a pandemic in the past. And so when we're looking and comparing ourselves, as we do often subconsciously do when we go onto social media, and we feel that sense that other people seem to be coping better than me, I am not coping as well as I should, and that ironically can make us more anxious when we start to worry that we're not coping, that we're not flourishing, that we're not baking bread and finding new recipes and flourishing under lockdown. That can also lead to a sense of hopelessness and a sense of disconnect with other people, that I'm not like everybody else. And certainly at the moment, a lot of us might be misunderstanding. And I think that's a big part of the piece. When we're on Zooms with people, it's a lot harder to get a read on how they really are. This is very two-dimensional. So we're not seeing people's body language. We're not seeing how people are when they close their laptop down. And so we can presume that somebody seems really happy and really together, and then they may get off that Zoom and just fall into a heap and go, oh my God, that was exhausting keeping up that pretense.
Yeah.
And then there's other people that are really languishing, and they're talking about that, and then they hang up the Zoom, and then they feel that, oh, I think I've told people too many things, and then that overthinking, which is a big part of anxiety, also takes over.
Yeah.
So it's just not a natural way of living. And I think this is the thing for us all to be super aware of, is how normal it is to be feeling anxious at the moment, particularly anxiety, because this isn't normal. We don't know what's coming next. We don't know how to plan. We try and plan, and our plans get scarpered anyway. So I think this is where we get into the piece, which Michael and I are big fans of, is talking about mindfulness.
Yeah.
Because when we're focusing on what's happening now, rather than focusing on what has happened in the past or what might happen in the future, that is the key to calm.
Yes.
And when we're calm, our brains function better. We're able to have our neurons firing and our synapses talking to one another very efficiently, which is why we get into the exercise place. And it's not to say that we all need to join CrossFit and become fanatic gym junkies. That's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about exercise. Just going for a walk and elevating your heart rate and breathing in some fresh air can make a big difference to how much oxygen is in your blood.
Yeah.
And when you have lots of oxygen in your blood, it pumps better and you think better.
Yeah.
I always challenge everybody to go on a phone call. If they've got a long phone call that they know they're going to be on, get in a habit of just putting your earplugs in and walking while you're talking. And for me, and I've spoken to a lot of people that have the same experience, when we're walking, our brains work better because the blood and the oxygen is circulating through our body quicker.
Yeah.
And my brain can pivot and move and change and think a lot better when I'm on the move.
Yeah.
So that's something that COVID's given us that we probably wouldn't have been thinking of doing, 2 years ago. That would not be something that would be considered as an option. So they're few and far between, God knows, but there are some, things that we've learned about ourselves when we've been in this state of languishing, for want of a better word.
And just picking up, I think it's an important point about, you talk about the importance of, becoming calm and getting in the current moment. I think the other thing that does as well is it flows onto your behaviour in your household with partners or kids. You're going to be a better partner and a better mother or father because you're in that calm state. And like you said, you're making better decisions and you're better assessing situations, aren't you?
And this is where it gets into what I'm now doing myself. There's a couple of things that I created last lockdown in 2020. Doesn't that seem like that was easier? But anyway, we digress. I now have a really routine that's relatively strict in the evenings where, I'm still, most days, which is dreadful, having a gin and tonic, but I'm very mindful. I pour it at 5 o'clock. And so I have not had any alcohol an hour before bed. I then also know it's usually about 8:30. I'm getting really tired at the moment, which is something that's also really normal when we're in lockdown, to feel that sense of being really sleepy. It's taking a lot out of us. All this anxiety and all this stress and all this worry is draining us. And this is why sleep is so important. And so if you can try and get yourself into a new routine at bedtime, so an hour before bed, start to give your body these little hints, if you like, that we're about to go to sleep. And this is when we talk about habit stacking, so that our body and our mind understands what's coming next, because it's not a perfect instrument. It's not a computer. It's not going to automatically understand that I've closed my eyes, I want to sleep. So for me, I get up I'm usually watching TV these days. So I usually get up, go and fill a glass of water, go upstairs, put that on the bedside table, open my bed, pull my sheets back, arrange my pillows, put the big pillows on the ground. I then go around the bed, go in and wash my face, brush my teeth, then sort of have a moment of how was today, How did it go? Out of 10, how did my day go? I lost you. Was it my internet or yours?
Yeah, I just checked my speed. I think I'm good.
Yeah. I'm on all my bars too.
Yeah, just a bit of a glitch.
Bit of a glitch. God, you
I'll
love
tidy
it.
it up later. That's all right.
Where did you lose me?
Look, I think right towards the end, you just were transitioning into, talked about sleep, then you talked about habit and habit stacking, and, 5 o'clock G&T time. So it's sort of...
My reward, I found pink gin. So...
Oh, yes.
It's a grapefruit. Have you had the grapefruit one from Italy?
I haven't.
My God.
Do you have it with tonic or just on its own? Or
I'm doing tonic, but you can do it with soda. I'm being...
Depends how your day's been, perhaps.
Exactly. I'm trying to be good, but it's just, honestly, I don't drink a lot, so it's my little reward for at the end of the day is having it. But the problem is, I was laughing with a friend, I'm free pouring. So when I get to a pub when this lockdown's over, I'm gonna, where's the gin? And nutrition's a big piece of this, and this nutrition. And I know everybody gets really bored of talking about eating well, but I think the motivation for me shifted when I understood what I eat has an impact on how I feel. And that's then a buy-in, to think about what is it that I get out of when I eat right, when I am conscious, and I sort of call it now, it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing, but I call it now, I'm on my pregnancy diet. When I was pregnant, my body was this sacred temple that I never let anything bad in. And I was always really fanatic about what I ate, and I was mindfully eating a lot when I was pregnant, and I wouldn't just throw food into my mouth. I would think, yes, I really, really want that. I'm going to eat it, even if it was a donut. And so I'm finding I'm doing that again. And so I'm thinking about, do I need this? What have I done to justify this fuel that I'm having? And when I eat really well, I do find myself with much more energy. I find myself able to think better. I'm sleeping much better. And my mood is different. It's different. It really is. With a couple of weeks of really focusing on eating right, doing a bit of exercise, getting as much sleep as you need. We've now discovered that we don't all need 8 hours sleep. Whatever you need to be fully firing, I sort of need between 7 and 8 for me to be really feeling good the next day, but we're all different. And being mindful of creating good habits, particularly in lockdown. So discover something new about yourself. So for example, with me, I've made my challenge. I'm a dreadful runner. I can't run. I've just downloaded the 10K app, and my goal is, I live 5 kilometers from the Opera House because I'm very, very lucky. And my goal is to run to the Opera House and back home by the end of October. And so if we can give ourselves little goals, little things that we can get a sense of accomplishment about, which we're going to be talking about when we talk about positive psychology a little bit later, that makes a big impact on feeling like we're getting somewhere, because a lot of us can feel very frustrated at the moment that we're not getting very far. Things keep halting, and it's annoying because it is. And so if we can start giving ourselves little incremental wins as much as we can to give us that sense of achieving something, that makes a big difference as well to feeling that lack of, and the term we use with depression is languishing, which I love that word because it is how sometimes you can feel. I've had people that have had depression describe depression feels like you're walking through quicksand. And so we don't want to get to the point when we are feeling that way, and we've been feeling that way for so long that we don't know how to get ourselves out. And that's really what we're talking about when we talk about the science of wellbeing and positive psychology, is doing daily habits, daily routines, daily rituals to give ourselves the best chance of not languishing in the first place.
Can I just add to that? I think habits is a big one for me. I've been doing some coaching and training myself, and habits is a great one, and it's talked about a lot. It can create a massive shift in your life. And there's 2 sort of comments that stick in my mind. Is first, we make our habits, and then our habits make us. I think that's a great one to reflect on. Another good one is that in every area of our life is a direct reflection of the habits in that area of our life. So again, just picks up on your habits can create a great shift if you can start to develop them and of course stick to them as well. So.
And that also again comes back to that sense of accomplishment, that I did something that wasn't easy. And I think too, even with something that is hard, this modern idea we have that everything needs to be easy. I know for me, when the worst times of my life have happened, that has been when I've learned the best lessons. That is when I have matured, when I have really built my character and my resilience. Yeah. And the big thing is, particularly with young people, they do avoid those negative emotions. They do avoid feeling stressed and overwhelmed. It freaks them out.
Yeah.
Instead of freaking out, just say, okay, this is normal. I'm anxious. Why am I anxious? And this is going to be a lesson. What have I learned looking back? And then suddenly you can find yourself almost embracing adversity because, oh my God, cool, there's going to be a lesson here.
Yeah.
And this is where it all comes around in swings and roundabouts. Life isn't always easy. Yeah. It's just Instagram that has us in this false belief that everything's going to be wonderful and everyone else seems to be hashtagging living their best life. And I'm not. What's wrong with me? And so we need to be really mindful, particularly with social media.
Yeah.
Is a lot of people are feeling a negative emotion. And so their habit, which isn't a great one, I don't want to feel that negative emotion, so I'm going to distract myself. It's often done subconsciously. I'm going to just turn on my phone and scroll through Insta.
Yeah.
Because it diverts me from my negative emotion.
Yeah.
The tragic irony of that is when we do that, there's two things that happen that aren't great. The first thing is we're not acknowledging the emotion that we're feeling, which is a legitimate emotion that you're entitled to feel. And when you ignore that emotion, it doesn't go nowhere. It stays down here and you haven't acknowledged it. So that's there and that'll keep being there. And the second thing, which we've closely studied with the science of wellbeing, and this has been researched and studied, social media in particular gives you no upswing in your mood. So what they did with the study that was out of Yale University, and I think it was 8 years ago, so before this really became so prolific, even back then, they found that if you looked at an image and the research was, I feel better than that person, which is not a very nice way of putting it, but, you're comparing yourself favorably would be a better way of putting it.
Yeah.
You still stay here.
Yeah.
If you see an image that you don't compare favorably with, there's no up. It's all steady or down.
And this is happening unconsciously. That's the challenging thing, isn't it? Yeah.
But you don't know. You don't even realize, but we all know that feeling of our heart sinking. When you see, for me, even at my age, you can see, oh, I wasn't invited to that dinner. Even at my age, it's not to say that kids are the only ones to feel this way from time to time.
Sure. We
all can feel a little bit,
yeah.
Oh, okay. And that's okay. And it's all right to say, oh, okay, well, that was disappointing, anyway, I'm going to acknowledge that, that's fair enough that you felt disappointed, rather than I'm going to distract myself.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of the piece with the science of wellbeing is how it's not that social media is the devil. It is that it's causing people not to face what is really happening.
Yeah. Is there more to cover off around anxiety and what that is and sort of how we experience that we could cover off on, you think?
Yeah. So anxiety is an emotion. Well, it's not an emotion. It's a feeling, and it's a part of being human. And this is something to be really mindful with anxiety. Everybody gets anxious. It's part of the human condition. And it is very useful a lot of the time. You think about it. If you don't have any anxiety at all, your alarm goes up in the morning, I'm not getting up. Anxiety is what motivates you to get out of bed. If I don't get out of bed, I'm going to be late for work. If I'm late for work, I might lose my job. So anxiety is actually very useful a lot of the time, and we need to be stopping bagging on anxiety all the time. It gets us through difficult situations. It keeps us safe if we see a speeding car coming towards us. Anxiety is what moves us out of the way. It's very necessary.
Yeah.
The trouble with anxiety is it is still part of, and arguably, and a lot of people are becoming more and more into this point, that it is a lot to do with our ancient brain. And so we were very much on the lookout for danger when we were saber-toothed tiger country, that way back then. And so we would be on the lookout for danger because danger was real and it was physical, present danger. If we saw an animal that might come towards us, our body's response was anxiety. So all the blood would leave our brain and go to our muscles so that we were ready to protect ourselves or to run away. So fight or flight mode needed our muscles with all the blood in them so that we were ready to protect ourselves. And it kept us alive for millennia. Yeah. It was very, very necessary. The trouble is, in this modern world, we're not, well, unless we're in different parts of the world to the one we're in, we're not in physical danger, but our body still has that physical reaction to anxiety, to sensing threat.
Yeah.
And so as a result of that, the blood leaves our brain and goes to our muscles, which is why often people will describe freezing, or I can't think. They get to an exam and they can't remember anything. Or I just lost that for a moment. I can't remember how to do a basic thing. And that's your mind going blank. You could also get a sense of an elevated heart rate, sweating, flushing, needing to move, needing to sit still. So there's all different physical responses, and then there's the psychological stuff. So fear or excessive worry, phobias, vivid dreams is often a part of when we're feeling anxious. I'm having the most vivid dreams at the moment myself. And we've just got to acknowledge that it's just part of the human condition.
Yeah. And my 12-year-old son has separation anxiety. He's had it for 6 years. I'm learning a lot about it. And like you say, it's the big understanding is it's not something you need to fix or resolve, or it doesn't go away. It's about managing it.
Exactly.
Because it's always going to be there. So, yeah, that was a big takeaway from me. And what about in terms of, I know we spoke last time with the term about empathy and sympathy, and this is probably more from perspective of how we're engaging with others and how we might support others. Did you want to touch on that?
Empathy is a big part. So I'm a mental health first aid instructor, and empathy is a big part of the piece when we're talking with somebody who you might be concerned about. I might add, I now use empathy every day in every conversation. Empathy is far superior as a listening tool than any other, in my opinion. The reason for that is you're not listening to respond, you're listening to understand. And by that, I mean, we all do it. When you're having a conversation with somebody and you're waiting for a break in the conversation for you to talk about what you want to talk about, because we all want to be heard. That's normal too. What we're talking about when we use empathy is listening completely to that person. And by that, I mean, they say, I don't know, I'm feeling really overwhelmed at the moment. Everything's hard. I just don't know what's wrong with me. When we're wanting to not listen, we might say, I know, I feel the same way. Or we might say, oh, you'll be fine. It's just COVID. We're all, and it can feel, particularly if somebody is struggling with negative emotions, it can feel judgy and it can feel a little bit dismissive, or comparing what they've gone through is not as bad as what you've gone through, or any of those scenarios are very unhelpful for somebody that is wanting you to understand what it is that they're experiencing. And so by empathy versus sympathy, and there's a brilliant cartoon that Michael might send you all. It's just a YouTube, so I'm very mindful of not giving copyrights or anything. But it's basically feeling that emotion with the person and responding without trying to solve the problem.
Yeah.
That sounds really tough. Yeah. Tell me what that's like.
Yeah. That's from Brene Brown, who we both love, of course.
Yes.
Fantastic. And the other thing I wanted to touch on as well, Pippa, is happiness versus sort of flourishing or contentment. I know, again, some of the work I've done, people often tie happiness to, I'll be happy when, I'll be happy if, I can, until I've got that car or got that job or got the house, I'm not going to be happy until that happens. And that's a really challenging situation to put you in. I think happiness is a now game. We need to be happy now. And, you talk about flourishing as well. Did you want to touch on that?
Absolutely. So this is all, stuff I'm really, really into. This is probably my favorite thing to remind people about. Happiness is an emotion. Emotions, by their nature, are fleeting. So wanting to be happy all the time is impossible and ironically making you anxious because it's not achievable. So you're setting yourself up for failure. And this is where Dr. Martin Seligman, who's the founder of positive psychology, talks about the good life. So that's where we are looking for what we have right now and finding contentment in that. And contentment is way better than being happy all the time. Contentment is feeling good with what I have. Whereas I will be happy when, this is often in the future and often out of our control and often leaves us empty. There was actually a really fascinating study done about people that, and we all do it, looking forward to a holiday, counting down the days to the holiday, can't wait till the holiday. We waste months before the holiday getting excited about this holiday, the pressure on this holiday. And then inevitably we get to that beach. We've still got all our dramas. We've still got all our stress. We've still got all our problems. We're just in a better location.
Yeah.
And
I think I've heard a comment from Oprah, would you rather sit in the corner of your lounge room and go to meditate and go to ecstasy or take your grumpy self on the holiday with you? That's what you're saying.
And it's expectations of this holiday that you put so much thought into. And I've done it myself with my own kids when they're not grateful enough for the brilliant holidays that they're given. You can get a real sense of resentment. And so this is where, when you're planning and expecting that things will be better when I just need this job to be over, then I can relax. We need to learn how to find the good in right now because this is where we are. Yeah. We don't live in the future. We live now. Yeah. And when we waste so much time planning and thinking about things that are not in our control. And certainly this is the one thing that COVID has taught us all, if nothing else. So little is in our control right now. Yeah. It's unsettling. Yeah. And it is unsettling because it's not natural to be this out of control with no choices. And a lot of us haven't got a lot of liberty right now. Yeah. And so it's all of those things that we took for granted. We should really take this moment to really think about, what have I got right now? Yeah. And writing that down every day. And that's where gratitude practice is a big part of the piece as well, because when we write down the things, 3 things that went well today, 3 people that I'm grateful for, what's my mood out of 10 at the end of the day? All of these things are giving ourselves permission to explore how it is that we're feeling so that we're not ignoring those signs that we may be not traveling as well as we should. Yeah. And when we ignore those, we can make ourselves vulnerable to becoming unwell with our mental health. And let me add that as well, depression and diabetes, they're medical conditions. There's just one has a lot of stigma and one everyone understands. If someone gets a diagnosis of diabetes, there's a lot of empathy. There's a lot of, oh, tell me what that's like. People want to help. You get them casseroles in the office of dropping the kids to school. When you get a diagnosis of depression, people tend to take 2 steps back. They don't know what to say. This is a general rule, but it's been my experience with people I know that have experienced depression. And we need to change that. We need to change that stigma that there is nothing wrong with you. And this doesn't need to necessarily be a permanent situation, but we need to acknowledge that it's there. Just like a diabetic that ignores their diabetic, they can make themselves really crook before they get the help that they need if they don't acknowledge that they have diabetes. Just like somebody that has a diagnosis of depression or should have a diagnosis of depression and haven't gone to see somebody to get that sorted out, the longer we leave that, the greater risk we have of somebody staying unwell for longer.
Yeah.
And so early intervention, which is why conversations about letting your mates know that you're okay having this conversation, that
Be comfortable to speak up. Yeah.
100%. It makes a huge difference. And there has been science around that when people feel supported, when they're going through a mental health problem, they recover quicker.
Yeah. When we spoke last week, you talked about an acronym PERMA. And did you want to touch on that? I'm wondering if that's our key to be able to flourish in our communities potentially.
That's certainly what positive psychology is all about, is PERMA. So PERMA is an acronym. So it's PERMA. The first is P, a positive emotion every day. So this is where your gratitude practice kicks in. So to focus on things that have gone well that day. So finding something. And as I said to Michael last week, sometimes you've got to dig deep. Sometimes the day did not go well at all. I've actually had to put in one of my gratitude numbers was I ate a nice punnet of strawberries. It doesn't have to be big stuff. It doesn't have to be meaningful, big moments. It can just be the little things. So getting some practice of some positive emotion every day. The E is for engagement. So engagement is essentially the things that we do where we find flow. And by that, I mean the things that you flow with it. It comes naturally. You lose time. You enjoy doing these things. You almost become mindless when you're doing the thing that you're engaging with. And so for me, it's all different things, sailing, running, hanging out with friends, reading, being by myself. Often I do lose time. I'm quite lucky in that respect, but we're all different. A lot of people love, swimming or surfing or whatever it is that you enjoy doing, gardening, cooking. I've got one friend that actually finds her engagement in cleaning. She finds it really mindless and she loses time doing it.
Do you think sometimes, yeah, indeed. Sometimes, Pippa, it's good as well just to stop doing and just be. That's also, very good, isn't it?
Yeah. And just to listen to the sounds around you and what can I smell? What can I taste?
Yeah.
What can I touch? All of those things and just being.
Yeah.
We don't do that a lot. We've got a lot of distractions in this modern world, and to slow down, and ideally in nature is even better.
Yeah.
It really can be very restorative to somebody that's, having a mood that's not the best mood.
Yeah. I heard another great comment as well, is, if you're in the kitchen stirring the pot, just stir the pot. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So be in that moment. There's you can go pretty deep, and there's a lot to that. If you're in the kitchen stirring the pot, just be in that moment and stir the pot. I really like that one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And funnily enough, the risotto is brilliant if you're cooking because you can't leave the stove.
Exactly right.
And then there's relationships. So have a think about who the people are in your life that lift you up, that encourage you not to give up, that make you feel good, that give you that positive reinforcement. And if you don't have lots of people like that, start thinking about seeking out people that make you feel that you can accomplish hard things, because that's a big part of it. I actually, when I remember, which is usually every other day, I look in the mirror and say, you can do hard things, Pip. Because I think we all need to remember that we can.
Yeah.
And it does build that resilience. Yeah. When we avoid the hard stuff, we're losing an opportunity to learn and to grow and to build that character and to keep building that resilience muscle. Everyone bangs on about resilience a lot. But the truth is, it's just like any other muscle. It needs work and effort to build it up so that when you need it, it's there. It's not just going to miraculously be there without you doing some work.
Yeah. We also talked about, in relationships, reaching out to those people to talk to. And often on the flip side, it can be, perhaps not reaching out to some of those people that sometimes they drag you down and get you in an uncomfortable spot. Maybe we have more awareness of that and you make a hard choice to perhaps spend less time with them and mix with people who are going to lift you up and be positive.
And that's for your well-being. And that's a big part to remember. Nobody at all is responsible for you but you.
Yeah.
So you need to make choices that are good for you.
Mm.
And it doesn't mean that obviously if it's family members or something like that, it's a lot trickier. But I'm also very mindful of how I'm tracking. If I'm feeling good and I'm feeling resilient and I've had plenty of sleep and I've been doing all the right things, I'm far more able to Teflon off the comments that people that aren't as good for me. Whereas if I'm feeling really low, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm tired, I'm angry, I'm cross, that stuff tends to seep in more and I tend to react. So we just need to be mindful of, it's not to say that we cut those people out. Although if you do, I've cut out 3 people from my life when I turned 40. So I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm also in that space of how am I, and you know who those people are because their name comes up on your phone and your heart sinks. So if you can just put that through to voicemail, send them a text, don't be rude, just saying, sorry, really busy, can I give you a call tomorrow? That just gives you that sense of control back, that these people aren't just at you and you're at their beck and call. Get some power back and make that so that, you're not always just available whenever they want you.
Yeah. Another powerful approach is to not take things personally a lot of the time, isn't it? Which can help. Yeah.
Which is hard sometimes. And this is the thing, when you feel robust and when you feel resilient and when you feel strong, it's a lot harder to take things personally. And this is the thing, when we're feeling a bit vulnerable, when we're feeling a bit low and a bit flat and sad, those comments, they can seep in. And so we need to be aware that, we're feeling a bit low. Is it the best thing for my well-being to be having that conversation? It's probably going to make me feel worse. That's not what I need today.
Yeah.
And having that agency to check in with yourself to know where you're at so that you don't fall into that mistake.
Yeah.
And then we have meaning with our PERMA. So meaning is finding the things that essentially you get out of bed for each day, whether it be your family, whether it be your friends, whether it be your job, whether it be volunteering, whether it be your church, whatever it is that you find gives you meaning in your life. That is a big part of it, because meaning is purpose. And when we have purpose in our lives, we have a real sense of connection, a real sense of achieving things, belonging. And that's a big part of feeling like you matter. And so when we are connected to our community and we're contributing to our community in some way, that's a big part of that sense of being part of something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
And we've lost that. And it's not, I'm a lapsed Catholic myself, but I do mourn the fact that we used to go to Mass every Sunday and we would give thanks. Gratitude practice. It was a ritual. Remember, don't be mean to others. Think of others. All of that stuff. We got that weekly reminder of how to be, being a good person is important. And it's not to say that I want to go back to church at all. I'm not saying that, but we haven't replaced that ritual with something else.
Yeah.
And so that weekly reminder of thinking about other people and not being selfish and being kind and being grateful for what you have was actually, ironically, a good thing. There was just some other things that ruined it, but which we won't go into now. But, it is part of that, that habit, can be negative and positive depending on what the habit is.
Yeah.
And so creating good habits is very empowering and makes you feel like you are more in control of your emotions, your choices, and how you react to situations. And taking that breath, practicing when you're finding yourself getting that rage, as my kids call it, it comes from your gut and it travels up. And if you're feeling that, it's normal.
Yeah.
Okay, it's normal to get really angry sometimes. But if we can take a beat, take a couple of breaths, why am I so angry right now? Why has that made me so wild? And exploring that and letting yourself feel that emotion and not reacting, that gives us two things. It shows, if you're a parent, it shows your kids how to master emotions and they don't master you. And secondly, that give your brain the moment that it needs to get some blood back there for it to start thinking. Because when we're enraged, this stops working properly.
Yeah.
And so we can't think, and we make bad decisions sometimes. So we need to be really mindful of, yes, negative emotions are part of being human and they're nothing to be concerned about. But we also need to be mindful of when we're experiencing anxiety or rage, they do give us flawed reasoning in how we manage a problem.
Yeah, I think ultimately as well, we can try and be more consciously aware about where we're coming from. We can be, from my understanding, we can be coming from a place of sufferance or a place of empowerment, and you can unconsciously sort of go down and come from a suffering path and be the victim, or you can consciously choose to come from an empowering state. And in each of the key areas of your life, whether it's work, family, or relationship, if the fuel for doing that is coming from a place of sufferance, you're not going to enjoy the journey at all. And you might achieve the goal, but how are you going to feel at the end of that? Probably it's a bit of a mirage at the end of the day. You might not even be happy when you get there. If you're choosing it from coming from a place of empowerment, you're going to enjoy the journey and have a lot better outcomes when you get to that at the end of those goals. So that's an option that we can choose to look at as well.
Yes, I think that's to remember for all of us that life in its very nature is a journey. It's not a destination.
Yeah.
And so when we don't enjoy the destination, we're wasting months and years of our life on planning. And I'm guilty of it. I don't think I'm sitting here saying I've got this all sorted. We all definitely are works in progress.
Yeah.
And when I find the key is to get ourselves educated about this stuff. So when we find ourselves worrying too much about next week, we pull ourselves up.
Yeah.
And that again gives our resilience muscle a blast, and that sense of accomplishment another blast, because I've realized, and aren't I good? I've just realized that I was doing that, and I'm going to stop doing it. I'm going to focus on today. I'm going to focus on the next 10 minutes rather than the next 10 months.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And just, being in that present moment is very, very good for your well-being. And then finally, accomplishment is the last of the PERMA. So accomplishment is having some satisfaction in the things that we've achieved. So whatever that might be, running 5K, to finishing a difficult task at work, to completing something that you were wanting to complete, to finishing a garden, to cooking a meal. It can be little things, but giving ourselves that sense of achievement to look back with a sense of pride at something that we've done that we thought was hard, but we got there. And that again also builds our resilience, that we can do hard things.
Yeah. So circling back to where we started, mindfulness is the key to the good life. So why do you believe that's the case? Is there a final thought on why that's the key to the good life?
Essentially, mindfulness is not bar and bay, frou. You don't have to sit in a triangle and do kumbayas. It's all just being present. And when we're present with a person, with ourselves, with our lives, with our children, that's the key to the good life. Because when we're not thinking about what we need to be doing, when we're not thinking about the things that we've done that we didn't like, that we felt were not as good, and our mind is not focused on where we are right now, that's where anxiety and depression live. Yeah. So if we can be present, fully present in every moment, this is what the Dalai Lama talks about. This is what yogis talk about. This is what mindfulness is all about. And you don't have to be really into all that Eastern stuff to have an understanding that it makes sense. Yeah. When you're present with somebody right in this moment, you are giving them your full attention. You are just in this moment with that person and trying to understand them, reading them, watching their signals, giving them that full attention is the gift. And when we're with ourselves, giving ourselves that full attention and that full nourishing, nurturing moment of just looking after me. How am I feeling right now? Where am I right now? What can I taste? What can I touch? What can I smell? What can I feel? All of that just being is incredibly restorative for us physically, mentally, emotionally, and we become better people. I promise, if you try this, when you wake up in the morning, get up 15 minutes earlier, new habit creation, habit stacking, go downstairs, put the kettle on if you have a cup of tea, or have a glass of water with lemon in it, whatever it is that you do, and do that for 2 minutes. It's not going to make your day not go to custard, but your reactions to your day going to custard won't be as dramatic than if you hit snooze 6 times, got out of bed, were running late, didn't have time to have a shower, didn't have time to have that tea or that coffee or whatever you have in the morning, and you're on the hop.
Yeah.
And I know that we've all done it. I've done it. Your day is harder. You started from a -2 rather than starting from a 3. Yourself the best chance to be able to manage the difficulties that you face. And that can be really easy to do if you are taking care of yourself first.
Yeah.
So that's probably my biggest takeaway. You matter.
Yeah, absolutely. Great note to finish on, Pippa. Thanks so much for that. So, look, what's the best way that people can get in touch with you? I know you, if they want to learn more, or their business or organisation would like to reach out to you, I can put up a contacts information page. What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Best way is to go to wellbeingwithpippa.com.au, which is my website, and you can just have a little look. It's actually getting built as we speak. It should be live tomorrow. And that just talks about the different things that I do. And that's a really great resource as well. I've also added in there some good tips and some good links to different websites that I'm, keen on people having a look at if they have an inclination to learn some more about this stuff.
Fantastic. Pippa, again, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks so much, Michael.